saying that COVID spreads through particulate matter in the air. I'm sorry, no, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Remember? Wait. Stop. I'm getting whiplash around here. It's been 7 months of this. What's going on over there at the CDC? They got to get their story straight.
Accidentally posted to the website.
In error.
Tell me how that happens accidentally. Don't press that button.
Wait, who put the intern on that?
Is Dr. Redfield there on the back end of the website posting content himself? And
Mr. Masks is safer than a vaccine. Oh my God! Honestly,
I don't understand.
He and Fauci need to leave.
I don't understand the experts. These are the same experts that told us no masks needed for healthy people in the spring, and then Redfield testifying before Congress the other day saying that wearing a mask is more effective in preventing COVID-19 than a vaccine would be, which is lunacy. It's the politicization of science, and it's people like Redfield trying to cover his derriere, I think, in his sinecure.
But then Redfield's also said, in the past that kids need to be back in school for in-person learning, that it's safe.
I understand. This is the point. They're behaving like politicians that are on every side of every issue. I agree with this, but I also agree with that. This is where adults have to come in and make real decisions, recognizing trade-offs, but that's not the position of the myopic. And then you have this, of course, the blaring headlines from CNN, promoters of an apocalypse. Mm-hmm. As doctors worry about a, quote, very apocalyptic fall, unquote, the CDC retracts info on how COVID-19 spreads. We may be in for a very apocalyptic fall, I'm sorry to say, Dr. Peter Hotez, Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College. Baylor College of Medicine. Okay. It's happening because we're forcing schools to reopen in high areas of high transmission. We're forcing colleges to reopen, and we don't have the leadership nationally telling people to wear masks and to social distance and to do all the things we need to do. It's funny because you could make the same argument about many European countries that had a light touch, the lightest of touch being in Sweden, but who reopened schools months ago and we're not hearing from their epidemiological professionals the same sort of apocalyptic predictions.
Not one reported case of student-to-teacher transmission of COVID.
And so what are we to make of what we are to do? It goes back to what Dr. Joseph Ladapo from UCLA School of Medicine wrote in the Wall Street Journal the other day, which is, do you want to live for COVID or do you want to live with COVID? For more on this, such philosophical questions, are pleased to be joined again by Slavoj Zizek, Slovenian philosopher, researcher at the Department of Philosophy at the University of Ljubljana, Faculty of Arts, and author of most recently, Pandemic, ! COVID-19 shakes the world. He's also authored Hegel in a Wired Brain. He is a neo-Hegelian, which is where we part company, but it's fun to talk to him anyway. Professor Zizek, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
And so the apocalyptic predictions coming from some in the public health medical community, that's got to be sort of not good news to your ears. I don't want to make it sound schadenfreudish like that, but you believe we need to rethink how we address things like pandemic because we need to rethink how we organize civil society, right?
Not only civil society, our entire life economy and so on. I suspect both this apocalyptic stance and the let's return back to normal stance. I noticed with many people who advocate this let's return to normal life stance that there is a hidden despair in it. When I talk with them, they tell me, I really expect apocalypse, so let's now enjoy the time as long as we can.
That may be. I mean, there may be some fatalistic among us, but a lot of us don't believe the apocalypse is around the corner and just recognize that there are trade-offs in life, recognize that, unfortunately, death is a part of life, and this virus doesn't affect everybody similarly, and so we should do the best we can with limited resources to protect those truly vulnerable and be a little bit more sensible about risk assessment with those less vulnerable.
I agree with this. But my fear is not only the pandemic as such, but the pandemic in combination with other catastrophes which are going on, may happen, and so on, like the obvious example, forest fire in California, Oregon, rise in temperatures in northern Siberia, and so on. What I fear is, that if we combine these two threats, I predict this, it's a safe prediction, the economic crisis which will strike harsher in the fall, and the combination of all these threats and so on, then we are in some trouble. So there will not be an apocalypse, but things will just gradually getting more difficult. Not so much at the level of pandemic, at the level of everyday social life. Look at the United States. My God, you are approaching a kind of a full civil war, at the moment ideological, but it may well go towards modest armed conflicts here and there. They already took place in Portland, and so on. This is for me all part of the same critical situation, and the thing to avoid is to treat all these issues as distinct. Like some people from the establishment, I admit it, are using the pandemic to put pressure on social protests or on ecological protests, claiming now we have to focus on pandemic, so let's ignore a little bit ecology or racism and so on.
Well, there's always going to be forest fires in California. There's always going to be tornadoes in Oklahoma and Kansas, no matter who's the president, no matter if we have a pandemic or if we don't. But you need to relax. And also, one thing that is good news that I hope you know about it, in the Southern Hemisphere where they just had their winter, flu was almost gone. I mean, compared to previous years, it was down so low, and there was not even when in some of the countries there were reports of 0 flu cases for the regular flu. So that's good.
No, I agree, and also to tell you another bit of weird news here from Europe. You know, in my country, Slovenia, in Germany, in some, not all other countries, you know that the effect of pandemic is much less old people died than usual. Because, okay, in Germany you had people dying of pandemic, but many older people took care of themselves because of the pandemic. So the global statistic in Germany for the first half of the year is, if I got it correctly, 4,000-5,000 less deaths than usually. So I agree with you. It's a complex picture. And let's admit something else. Yes, we should trust science, but scientists themselves admit that they don't have the full picture. Like what you already mentioned, Sweden was an absolute surprise for most of the people, no?
Yeah. Wasn't surprised.
Not to me, but it was a surprise to a lot of people. And yeah, I mean, you have the great irony now of Boris Johnson and now announcing effectively a renewed lockdown in Britain, while Britain has taken Sweden off their list of countries that you have to quarantine if you travel to and from. I mean, how ironic is that? But I know we live in a world without irony these days. And so then
I know that's the problem. But sorry to interrupt you. At a deeper level, I think, forget me to repeat all jokes from my book, but there is one wonderful story which nonetheless, I think, fits the situation today. It's an old joke of mine, but it's not a joke, it's a fact, allegedly. In 1916 or 17, there was a exchange of telegrams between German and Austrian headquarters. And German telegram to Vienna was, the situation on our part of the front is serious but not catastrophic. As you can guess, the Austrian answer was, on our part of the front, the situation is catastrophic but not serious. And that's how many people react to the situation, at least in my part of Europe. Yeah, we know from the media it's a catastrophe, but don't take it too serious.
Sure, nothing to get all worked up about. It's just another catastrophe the media is reporting on. That level of desensitization, that's interesting. But so then help me understand. It seems like from the reviews I've read of your book, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I've read the reviews, that the thesis is sort of what you said at the outset, which is we need to reorder our entire existence in terms of our lives as economic man and woman, as well as civil man and woman, and the pandemic is the impetus to do so. Well, then why?
Well, first, I'm not a naive utopian here. I don't think simply pandemic means we will have to introduce some kind of socialism. All I'm saying is that capitalism is changing. In its basic form, how finances function. For example, you know what happened in the United States and United Kingdom, I think half a week ago, on the very day when the catastrophic, bad economic results were announced, high unemployment, crisis, brutto product went down for 20%, even more. Stock markets went up.
Right.
It's not simply an illusion. It's that now I think a new type of capitalism where financial sphere is more alienated from production. Stock market speculations no longer mirror economic success is entering. So all I'm saying is that our economic reality is already changing. Even those who claim, yes, things will be going on as normal, I only claim, no, they will not. We live in time of change.
But
and it's up to us. Nothing is predetermined what will happen.
But you argue, I'm quoting a passage from your book, you argue for a, quote, global organization that can control and regulate the economy as well as limit the sovereignty of nation states when needed. Seems like a shift away from the market to more centralized planning, and we've seen that before.
Well, I don't use on purpose the term centralized planning, but I'm just referring to, it's not a communist utopia or what, to what up to a point is already happening, my God. Look what happened even in the United States, although in an unjust way.
But wait, just to interrupt you, and then I'll let you finish. But what's happening now, but you're also criticizing what's happening now, these government interventions in some respects. So now you're just arguing, it seems to me, that you want the same sort of interventions, you just want the interventions to take a different form.
Yeah, but these interventions, maybe they are not done in the right way. But I think that, you know what's the paradox? There is a famous video game, I forgot its title, where the dying hero says, we must, the point is not to change the world, the point is to leave the world the way it is. And precisely to save the things we all like, our civil societies and so on, we must change some things. Change is necessary to keep the things we all like going. That's our paradox. Those who claim we can just go on, no need to save things, those will be surprised how things will appear unrecognizable to us. It's very easy, to get used to things getting worse and to renormalize. Look at you, United States.
I agree with that.
If somebody were to say 5 years ago, we will have Trump as president, you wouldn't take him seriously. Now you have him and so on.
No, I understand, but I'm trying to get a handle on what it is you think what sort of change in the superstructure of society is required to generate the positive change that you seek, or I guess that we would seek, you would argue.
I don't think even the superstructure is crucial. Okay, by superstructure you mean ideology in general. Here I'm rather a pessimist, more for the United States than for Europe. When you have this clear-cut opposition, Trump or new right populists, whatever you call them, and whatever you call the other side, liberal, center-left, and then as a third component, democratic socialists, I don't see any possibility of a big national reunification, reconciliation here. I think this is a fight where one side must win. Do you think it's a possibility of some kind of national unity? We all come together for some basic rules? No, I'm a pessimist here.
Okay, but what, if you could wave a wand, what would this governing or global organization, quote unquote, that you're referring to look like? How would it function?
First, I would say more coordination within nations. For example, things like establish a body, it can be World Health Organization on another more efficient. My God, almost everybody is telling us that the pandemic basically can be beaten only globally. This idea that you will have some countries which are like bubbles, living in a bubble, safe, others not, in the long term, it doesn't work. So I don't like to speak about central global organization because, of course, this opens other tremendous perspective of bureaucratization, corruption, and so on. I'm just talking about coordination in the sense that no part of a single society, no part of the world should be sacrificed as, okay, you are now out, we don't care what happens there. This is simple things like that. Then point two, to see state by state, not imposed by some central organization, that the pandemic crisis is linked to other crises. And I think I read recently in German weekly magazine Spiegel a report on how, nonetheless, these new fires in Australia, California, and so on, do something different. The fires still now, forest fires and so on, well, they were over, and then the same type of plants regenerated.
Yeah, but
I don't know how.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but so these are voluntary associations of countries and nation states, as opposed to, I mean, it's in the form of a UN or a NATO, something like this. I mean, because if you're not proposing something new, you're just proposing more coordination between countries. Well, we see how that plays out in some of these global organizations. The WHO would be another example to be pandemic related. And so, I mean, I don't know that has been, particularly effective. Those global institutions that are based on mutual interests and coordination.
No, what I think, maybe I'm wrong here, is that sooner or later it will become clear that even single countries will get the point that it cannot be safe alone, that you need connection. In Europe, this has become clear. Germany, for a certain time, Spain, they thought, okay, we can do it alone in a bubble. No, you cannot. And in Europe, we already...
Professor, you're breaking up on us there. Oh, Professor?
Sorry, yes?
Oh, yeah, you were breaking up on us there. I'll let you finish your point.
No, sorry, very quickly. I just think that if you connect these with ecological problems, with problems of racism, new poverty, economic wars, and so on, again, I'm not counting on some new moral awareness, like people will discover the common good. I hope that at some point it will nonetheless become clear, like with Extinction Rebellion and so on, that common good is also in your egotist interest.
All right. He is Professor Slavoj Zizek, Slovenian philosopher, researcher at the Department of Philosophy of the University of Ljubljana, Faculty of the Arts, and author most recently of Pandemic! COVID-19 Shakes the World. Professor, thanks for joining us. Good luck with your book. Appreciate it.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's morning, he wasn't done talking, by the way.
Well, yes.
Okay. Well, coming up on Chicago's morning answer.
It's just, I just trying to get a handle on where he is. And he's a celebrated Hegelian philosopher. He's written extensively, but on the one hand, he wants to talk about a new global coordination. But he's not talking about a new global institution, but he's also saying he doesn't expect sort of a new mentality to be developed. Well, as von Mises said, he who wants to improve conditions must offer a new mentality, not merely a new institution. So if it's not a new mentality and it's not a new institution, I don't know exactly what we have
Sounded
here.
like a surrender to me. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
All right. In a world without irony and a world without comedy, we thought PG O'Rourke still exists, and he joins us at 8:08 to talk about his new book.
And later, back to the cowboy, back to the road, and what's going to happen to his horse. But now let's head into the newsroom. Here is Mike Scott.
A girl and 2 adults wounded in a West Side shooting. Parents and students demand schools reopen in Naperville. WIND Chicago News Time, 8 o'clock.
He's expected to be critical of China. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. When President Trump addresses the UN this morning over its handling of the coronavirus outbreak, though he won't be there, he and other world leaders are sending videos, not gathering in New York during this crisis. At a rally in Ohio last night, the president